So welcome everybody to today's life in the A Day in the Life series of Women in Automation Session 2. I'm Diana Gray. I'm the Community Marketing Manager for UiPath. And I'm just going to show you what sessions we're doing. So right now we're on session 2. This is September 18th, and we have 2 additional sessions coming up. I will put in chat the URL where you can register for the 3rd session, which is in 2 weeks from today. And I will also put in chat where you can find the recording for today's session, and that will be available tomorrow. So if you can put any questions you have in the chat, we'll be looking at those as the session is moving forward. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Molly.
Awesome. Thanks, Diana. Thanks, team, for joining us today. As Diana said, we're hitting our 2nd session here for the Day in the Life series. And, really, what does success look like? I think one, just showing up and listening. I think we have a range of people of just wanting to know more about different roles, thinking about making maybe a move, or just trying to understand more what things look like in the product engineering world. So appreciate everyone joining. Yeah, feel free to pop questions in the chat. Maybe we can even, answer them as they come in. And I'm super excited to have our team here today. So I'm going to just jump right into intros and we can get started. If you want to hit one more slide for me, Diana. Perfect. So I'm Molly Meekum. I get to moderate today's session. I help lead the Women in Automation group here at UiPath, and I live in the go-to-market org. So this session really excites me because 1, it's 2 of my most favorite people, and 2, it's a part of the organization where I'm always trying to learn more and understand more in product and engineering. So I have Kimberly Chen with me, and I will let Kim maybe do a quick intro. And then I also have Noopur with me. So 2 amazing people who I know I look to and ask many questions, and excited to hear from them. So Kim, you want to do a little overview of who you are and what does your role and title mean? What does that look like?
Sure. So hi, everyone. I'm Kimberly Chen. I joined UiPath 5 years ago, so it's been a long journey at UiPath, and I've actually had multiple careers here at UiPath. I actually started in our post-sales organization as a director in our consulting org, and then I moved to product at one point, and actually I moved back to go-to-market side in the last year as a senior director in our strategy and transformation team. But I joined UiPath because I've always been very passionate about how people and technology work together, right? How can technology change the way people work? That's the reason I joined UiPath to begin with. So across all my different careers, even within UiPath, it's always been around like, hey, how do we ensure like in our customers' enterprise that the employees, everyone can benefit from automation in some form or another. So in my current role, though, for the last year, even though I'm on the go-to-market side, I've been helping with incubating and designing how to leverage generative AI in our sales organization specifically, and using our own products to dog food and improve our own sales reps' productivity, and drive more pipeline and close more deals. And so that part's been really exciting, that I still get to work very closely with the product team and the PMs on a day-to-day basis, but I'm actually sitting closer to the end users and actually thinking about how are we going to market and also position this for our customers so they can also leverage everything we've done and incubate it and do the same.
I love it. Bringing all the teams together. Thanks, Kim. Noopur?
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining and giving us your time. My name's Noopur. I'm a senior product manager here at UiPath. I've been here for about 3.5 years. Similar to Kimberly, I've had a couple different hats, not as many, but at the company. But I started in sales engineering, so was working directly with customers to provide demos and POCs, and then moved over to product because I had some product previous experience in a prior life in consulting. And I primarily work on discovery products, so task mining, process mining related efforts, and yeah. Mostly just trying to get folks to adopt discovery products and get them to build an automation pipeline.
I love it. All right. Thank you both for the intros. We're going to get into it for this next, I think, what is it? A half hour, 40 minutes. So have a handful of questions. We'll see what the team pops in the chat as well. And then maybe we'll even get to see some of what you all have been working on and you can show us some of that. So starting off, I think when we think about product engineering, it is a big, broad organization, means a lot of things to many people. But I think when we think about it in the simplest terms, it's translating those ideas into execution and driving, the future of the company in a lot of ways. So I'd love to understand maybe how you got into this organization, into this field, intentionally or unintentionally. But what does this start looking like for you, for maybe those looking to jump into this, or just understanding how you ended up in the P&E world? And then maybe a double click into that of, what does an average day look like? I'm sure they're very different all over the place, but if you could help kind of chunk out, what's an overview of the average day and how does that tie into where you're trying to drive your careers? Flip a coin. Who wants to go first?
I can start. Okay, so let's see. There were two questions there. I'll start with the first one, which is how did I find, this opportunity in P&E and transition over to it, or really identify my interest in it? So, I had done some product backlog, product ownership work in consulting prior to this. And I'd actually chosen to move away from that because I thought that that's not where I wanted to be when I came here as a sales engineer. Realized actually that driving product strategy and doing it in a different form here rather than, doing it for third-party customers, but directly for our customers here at UiPath was something I was really interested in. Funnily enough, the person who tapped me on the shoulder is on the call today. So I had a friend who was also a sales engineer, Rachel, who's on the call, and she said, "Hey, I think you would be good at this role and you have some product experience." And so she tapped me on the shoulder and found this opportunity for me, and we kind of aligned accordingly. So it's really cool to use my UiPath community to find the opportunity. Beyond that, I think a big part of it was also the interest in driving strategy. So product is always looking 6 months, 12 months, 24 months ahead of where we are at right now. We are always looking at the next release. And I was really interested in doing that and exemplifying that. And that interest when I was kind of pursuing this opportunity as well was key to that. As far as the second question goes, which is kind of the day in the life, I'm a little bit different than Kim in the sense that I am a core PM that is attached to a product, that is attached to a set of features. And so a lot of my job is not just ensuring that the folks using the product today are successful or, keeping the product green per se, it's functioning as expected, but we're doing that planning and strategy and innovative thinking for those 12, 24 months ahead. And so it's, doing the market analysis to identify the opportunities where we can have differentiators and be innovative. And then beyond that, it's actually going to look at what the execution of that might look like and directly working with the engineers to do that. So frequently, PMs are described as the translator of the customer needs. And so we take those customer insights from the market and we're translating them into actual execution. And that's pretty much the meat of what I spend a lot of my day on, with a few, different things sprinkled in there, as there always are, because you get pulled in different directions. But you really want to focus on identifying what will be the most impactful thing and ensuring that UiPath will have differentiators to be a market leader.
Super helpful. One, I love that somebody knows you so well in your interests, and then helps support you. So awesome to know that support and community can help align fits for careers. And two, I think the overview does help and really starts to understand, what is the role of a PM in the traditional sense. So maybe on kind of the other side of the coin, Kimberly, you touched a little bit on, you moved around a little bit as well, and maybe a different flavor of P&E. So would love kind of the same overview from you if you could.
Yeah, for sure. I would say moving into product was semi-accidental, but also intentional. And I'll talk about, this is back in 2022 when I actually formally moved into product for that 1 year and how that journey happened. But I know that for myself, I've always been someone that loved building things, like whether it was services, methodologies, whatever it might be. And product is just a different version of something that's tangible, right? That people are using. And so as someone who loves like designing, thinking through like user experiences, the customer journey, and then trying to find a way to build solutions of some form or another. Like product was another area that I thought was really interesting. For me at that time, I was deep in citizen development. Like I helped create the like automation operating model around citizen development. From a consulting perspective, I knew that a lot of our customers, we helped them think through what that design would look like. But when it came to actual implementation, our post-sales teams put so much effort into helping our customers guide them and drive how to actually launch their CitDev programs. And so for me, the inspiration and what I entered into the product team with was actually Automation Launchpad, which is that one-stop shop for citizen developers and also for COEs to help manage that program, because I knew how difficult it was. And I wanted to use a product to solve the problem versus, hey, let's give you like another PowerPoint or, Word docs to try to follow along and figure out how to do this. So for me, it was coming up with that idea. There was one night I remember I didn't sleep for 24 hours. It was just me and PowerPoint, blank slate, and actually wireframed out entirely what my idea would be, what it would look like, because I'm a visual person and I want to think through like, what does this really look like? What would that experience be? And I actually at that time brought it up to our CRO at the time saying, hey, I think this is something that we need, right? I think this is something that would help accelerate our sales on the sales perspective, because it's demonstrating what does a great CitDev program look like? How do we connect all the different products in our platform in that one journey in a single place? And then got the green light saying like, hey, we should build this. But as I was building it on the go-to-market side, I was like, hey, this is something that should belong in product, actually. This is something that can inform the designs of our cloud homepage in the future. This can inform so many things about the experiences and needs. And that's actually how I ended up moving over to product, because on the product side, they're like, hey, this is great. Like, this is something that, at that time, our products were a little bit more siloed. This brought it all together in one place. So that's actually how I ended up in the product organization. But I did build and actually had a POC already done and actually had customers testing it before I even moved over to product, before moving to product at the time. So my day-to-day, and I'll talk a little bit more about that core experience at that time, was a lot of it was thinking about, hey, I had this vision, and it was, as Noopur mentioned, it was breaking out like, if this is what the product is going to be, how do I get there starting from today, right? What do I want to release? What do I want to launch? And it's so much, you get really good at prioritization. I thought I was good at it, but you don't really know until you become a PM, and it's the trade-offs that you make, right? If I want to deliver on time at this point, like what are the things that I need to scope for now versus later, right? And what makes sense now versus later. And so that was definitely like my day-to-day was balancing like, okay, is that a feature we still want to release? Is that something we want to move to later? And then it's working with the developers, engineers, and making sure, okay, like if there's a bump in the road, okay, maybe we do push that off to the next release. And for now, we can still release something that works and, users benefit from it. So that was my core like product experience. And then today it's, even though I work with PM, so I'm giving a lot of the feedback to the PMs, and I'm working with the PMs as well. And like, hey, I think even though autopilot right now can only do these things, I think it's important in the future because we need it to actually be a true digital assistant to business users. We need to think about these and these things. But I talk about from the experience side, and then the PMs can go think about, okay, like, what does that look like? How do I work with the engineers to make it actually happen? So yeah, it's pretty awesome.
I love that. First of all, both of your excitement and passion, it comes through. Second of all, I love the combination of both strategy and execution. I think that's pretty powerful and pretty interesting to see that come to life. So doubling down on this, and Kimberly, maybe start with you, because you kind of touched on it, right? You've moved a little bit through the orgs, and you too, Noopur. As you think about product engineering and you think about the collaboration and aligning with the different teams, right? There's probably hard to say no, like you said, if you're going to ship something and make sure, your priorities are there and it makes sense, but understanding, working with the go-to-market team, the sales side, the marketing side, maybe other orgs within product and engineering. Would love to start to understand kind of that approach and how you've navigated that as you see, you stay up all night, you see this vision, you start building it. what are the recurring challenges or themes you started to see? And then how do you overcome them and really in that focus of working across the organization and across the company with other teams?
I would say, and Noopur could probably shed more light on it, but with my experience, when I was in a product org, it was definitely you as the PM or product owner, like you are you hold everything together, right? Like you are the central point that coordinates all the different pieces to make sure we're all moving on track for that. I know for myself, I had such a strong interest in actually exploring a little bit about all the different roles, maybe not engineering, that was like very technical for me, but for myself, it was very much even with the UX teams, the designers, right? Like I might have wireframed it out, but I gave it to worked with a UX designer and he gave me recommendations on like, hey, how do we make sure it looks like the rest of the UiPath suite of products, right? Like, hey, here are some recommendations. And actually he taught me how to use Figma, which is what we use to design. And so I could also get in there and take his designs and say, well, I want to propose something different. Like for me, it was building a little bit of like all the different skill sets. And as a PM, like you have so much you have to do that like you don't always have time, but it was for me, like I loved that was what I did from like 10 p.m. till midnight. Like I loved
Yeah.
digging into Figma and thinking about like, oh, maybe the design, we can change it here or there. And so for me, it was also working, not just like saying like, hey, here's do this, right? With the designer or like, here's the user stories, figure it out. For me, I really enjoyed working alongside, having working sessions and just getting into the actual design of it with my designer. And then for me, it was a little different because I didn't have product engineers with me. I had like RP developers because ours was put into an app using UiPath apps. But for me, it was again, getting into that part of it and being able to, hey, if my devs like worked on one piece, but I really wanted to accelerate it, I sometimes jumped in too and actually built parts of Launchpad myself. And I think that was like a choice that I made, but truly utilizing your whole team, everyone has a different role and it's all very important to make the ultimate product work. At the end, for me, I enjoyed learning a little bit about everything, being able to do a little bit of everything, just to get like that really well-rounded experience.
Yeah, super helpful. Also, I need your amount of energy to be doing all that extra work at night. Love it. Would love, yeah, kind of your take on that same question, Nooper, if you could.
Yeah, I'm candidly a 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night kind of girl, so I have to cut it off at 10. So I don't, I can't fit that in, but I do have to make similar trade-offs. Definitely, I view the trade-offs really in two different buckets. So I think one, there's the trade-offs between what you have across your horizontal teams, right? So product marketing engagement, your engagement with go-to-market, your engagement with your docs writer to get your official docs written for whatever feature, right? Your work with your designers. There are trade-offs, right? And candidly, I am not the best at it. I'm still learning how to say no. I always want to say yes. And so realizing and recognizing that we have to have clear priorities and align accordingly with those. That really then leads into the trade-offs that you have with your engineering team and when it comes to actually delivering features as well. You will constantly be asked, hey, can you add this? Can you improve this, right? Sometimes it'll come from your own folks within the company. Oftentimes it'll come from customers, right? And I'm always getting excited about things like, oh yeah, we should absolutely consider this. Okay, well, maybe we shouldn't build it right away. We've already committed to these other things for this release, right? And so a big part of trade-offs within, I think, the PM and engineering core area is the strategy and priority that you're looking to deliver in that next release, and then furthermore in that next fiscal year. For us, it's like, okay, well, what is the gold star for the next fiscal year? And is this going to help us contribute to that? And is this going to actually help us get us there? And the other part of this that I've been really big on, especially in the past few years, is making sure my engineers feel like I'm not just doing the prioritization, but that I'm simply communicating and conveying the priorities that I hear from the market, I hear from different sources and from customers, and we're building the priority list together and that they have buy-in with that. So One of the things we've started doing is monthly business reviews around discovery products, and it's actually only internal. We invite all of our individual contributors, including our engineers, and we give them insight into how people are using the product, what feedback they're giving, and examples of the things that they're asking for, where we're weighing those so that they can get buy-in. And then maybe 2 weeks later, when I'm building my next 3-sprint plan with them, they're saying, hey, I did actually hear you mention that there are customers getting value out of, us investing a little bit more in this space. Let's see if we can build some time for that. Let's see if we can reprioritize that trade-off, right? And so it's about getting everybody's buy-in, kind of selling the idea to yourself and to others internally if you really do believe in it, because you need people to be able to help you with that trade-off. You can't do it alone.
Yeah, I think that's a great view of that idea of complete transparency and communication and, getting that buy-in. That's super helpful. Is there anything that you all have seen kind of change in your careers of the last few years? And I know you've both bounced around, but is that expectation of that transparency and communication setting the bar then for you to say no more often, or people understanding has how you approach and kind of bring in those teams internally in the P&E group, externally with customers? Has that kind of made it easier over time, or is it a constant reiteration and marching to that same beat as a team? What have you seen kind of progress as you've settled into your careers in this space?
I think for myself, it was being confident that what my vision and what I'm doing is validated, like with the market, right? With the teams. But if ultimately the responsibility on the PM is like you are the person delivering that, I have to be able to say no. I know when I create Launchpad, like I went to pre-sales teams, I went to customer success, I went to customers. Everyone wanted a lot of different features, and I really wanted to deliver because I want to be that person that's like, yay, you did it, you solved the problem, right? And I think it's the best way that we, at least for myself, that I managed it was, it's okay if it's not in this release, right? It's like, again, it goes back to like, in this release, these are things we prioritize, but great idea, right? Like being able to go back and say, in the next release, we're planning this, or where is that timeline where things will be released? At least for myself, also made me feel better about saying, not right now, great idea, but hey, let's put it here, right? When we want to grow in that area, because otherwise you're never going to release, right? It's like if you keep adding features, like it's never going to be launched. But I think when I first joined into product, when I first started Launchpad, I was also new to the product org, and just being very transparent. Like I wanted people to like me, right? Like I was like, I'm new, like I want to incorporate your feedback. Oh, you want this, you want that. Even because Launchpad was also a single interface that was kind of linking to a lot of our different products like Studio, Assistant, Automation Hub, right? Cloud. I needed to also like bring everyone's perspective in here. And if they had things that they wanted me to add or remove, it was truly a collaboration of like, okay, when is the right time to do this? But I know at the beginning I was like a yes person until I realized I was like, this product is running away from my vision. It's actually turning into something different because I said yes to so many people. And at that time, I was working with Brandon Knott, who was the leader of that product pillar. And he actually was the one that gave me advice, being like, like no one's really going to say like, it's Kim's fault that this thing didn't release on time or it's not working, but ultimately you are the product owner, right? So you have to stand behind your decisions. And so I remember between the first like POC, like private preview, and by the time we launched that, like for that year, I was a completely different person. Like my ability to say, great, thank you. Excellent feedback. This is how we're going to work with that, like changed dramatically. So yeah, it's about feeling confident that like you make the right decisions for this, right? You have that intuition and understanding of like why you're making those decisions.
I love that. I love the trust your gut, your intuition, and that confidence that you have the vision and you've got to do everything you can to deliver on that. Noopur, anything additional on that one?
Yeah, I think, I moved from a sales adjacent role to a product role. And so I went from being as much of a yes man as I could have, or a yes woman as I wanted to be, right? Because I wanted to sell to that customer, to having to be the other side of it, which is sorry, that's not in the product right now. And sure, we can add it to the backlog, but realistically, it may not be delivered by X date or whatever it is. And that was a really hard transition to learn because nobody likes to be the bearer of bad news, right? To the customer in that time. And it's about being realistic and transparent and setting expectations. Internally, I think the transparency that I've really learned is important is the transparency around my weaknesses. So I was a non-technical hire. And so one of the things that I've been very transparent with my engineers about is I am the voice of the customer, but as a product person, I am also still picking up some of the technical things. Here are areas where I need to learn a little bit more. Can you help me learn them? Because if I can learn them, I might be able to help you achieve, the set of priorities that we need and deliver X feature. And that's been a really big part of also being transparent with the internal team. I think beyond that, it's also realizing and understanding what different business use cases are, and even like what is automation in a real business use case is something that is such a big idea, but until you start to actually work with customers, you understand those use cases, you can't actively and transparently communicate what the value of the product is. And that was like a big piece for me, is understanding that level of detail. And frankly, I always tell people this because I've been working with the summer interns this past summer as well. And I said, the more you're in the office, the more you're going to learn about what a business process is. Nobody knows what purchase to pay is or order to cash is coming out of college, right? But you learn about these details and then you build from there in the actual product features, the value, and how automation delivers that. And that's a growing process.
I love that. It's a lot. And I love the authenticity, if I can say the word, that you brought to the role, and based on where you had been, what you did know, and continuing to develop. I think those are pretty powerful. Related to this question, we got a couple of questions in the chat, and this kind of double clicks into it is, advice. You guys were product adjacent, go to market, kind of have seen different roles and ended up in product or supporting product. Any recommendations for people thinking about entering this group, product and engineering, but might not have that direct experience? I think you said you had, product adjacent. As you got into it and maybe continue to, any resources, skills, or opportunities you would suggest for those, exploring potential roles and careers in product?
So I can start by giving a few. They're kind of the non-tangible and then the tangible, right? So the less tangible ones are understanding business processes, understanding value propositions, understanding, just the market of the tool a little bit at a larger segment. The more tangible ones, there's literally a book called Cracking the PM Interview. Everybody reads it for the most part when they're going towards those, right? The Harvard Business Review Journal does, all of these different use cases and understanding those. And then I always tell people the biggest thing from a tangible skill perspective, beyond some technical skills, I would say, that I had to pick up that I didn't expect here coming into this specific product role, was writing and clarity and conciseness in the way that you write. A big piece of the way that product managers communicate their not just use cases and stories or features, right, is through different forms of writing. Now, sometimes that's in literal one-pagers on Confluence, sometimes that's in decks, but clarity and conciseness in the way that you communicate is absolutely a necessity in this role. And those kind of come from those other intangible pieces that are like understanding the market, the segment, the customer. They all input into that. But I didn't expect there to be so much writing, candidly, and it is key to success here.
That's a good one. That's super helpful. And then Kim, you touched a lot on your priorities and holding strong on that. A couple of questions around, what factors, when you are looking in that priority list, you have the vision, you kind of came back to that a little bit of feedback is great. You could take it all in and then you have to digest. Are there themes and key factors that you continually come back to as you look at how you intake that feedback, how you prioritize even within your own list, that maybe you could share with others?
Yeah, and actually, as Noopur said, it actually goes back to the business case. Like the reason why you write those, that's called product specifications, like product specs documents, is because the first section of it is like, what's the value it's driving? Like why is this a thing? Like, why are you creating this? Why is this feature something you want to like bring in, right? There's a reason behind it. And the great thing about having a product spec is something you can always go back to and reference, like, right, this is where I was, like, this is what I was meant to do. Because it's so easy to get caught up in like, oh, that'd be such a great idea. Oh, like, this is a cool thing to chase after. But a product specs helps ground, like, what is the purpose? Like, there's different levels of product spec. There's even at a greater level, like, you know, the whole automate pillar, for example, at UiPath, and then you dive deeper into separate actual products and then actual features. But the whole point of this is you're thinking about like, what creates the most impact? For me, it's always balancing, like, just like when we do consulting, you know, like measuring like ROI, right? What is like the greatest impact? And then what is that investment required? So that's actually how you would measure and prioritize that feedback that's coming back, right? On what you want to prioritize. It's the same in product. It's at the end of the day, at least like with UiPath, like our products are meant to solve business problems, right? Like, what does this feature? Does it suddenly enable, like, you know, on-prem customers to be part of this, right? Or is it, you know, cloud only? You know, the scope of things, does it now open up? Originally, it might be targeting just one business function, but now, hey, this one feature is actually going to make it better for all different functions across an enterprise, like things like that, right? It's thinking about that, and it's understanding your target market. Who are those people? You know, and at the end of the day, what does that do for UiPath as well?
Yeah, super helpful. I think another question that came in that was related with all things AI right now happening everywhere. Has that impacted how you all are looking at product? And what might you double click onto that as we evolve constantly every day? And I'm sure customers and go-to-market teams are coming to you asking a lot of these questions. So I'd be curious of any major shifts with, you know, what has it been the last year, 18 months, 2 years with all things AI coming to the forefront?
Yeah, I think Kim can definitely talk to obviously autopilot as
Yeah.
one of the big things that she's worked on. From the rest of the products, what we've basically seen, right, is I think two big things. One, we are late to the AI game. We've been working with proprietary models for years, right? We've been investing in machine learning, and we've been having partnerships with AI companies for a long time. So that's a really good place to be in, is, hey, we don't have to establish it. We just have to grow what we're doing. And that's really where we're going with it. Beyond autopilot, I think what we're looking at is not just what are some like fluffy new features that we can say have Gen AI, but what are sticky and valuable features that we can add. And that's what every product is asking themselves right now, is not just, can I build an autopilot for X product, but can I build an autopilot, or can I embed autopilot functionality in a way that actually delivers more, you know, interaction within that product, delivers faster time to value with that product, or gets the customer something they didn't get before, right, in their path to automation or operating their automation program. And I think that's really where the question has been. Candidly, every product gets to that point at different times. Like, some products have gotten there faster than others. We already see that with our product offerings. I feel like at this time next year, we're going to be having a different conversation altogether, because every product's going to have a clear Gen AI approach. And it's going to be, you know, it's going to be our core product plus, not our core product or our Gen AI features. It's going to be, these are embedded and valuable to the core product offerings that we already had, in addition to the other valuable features that we've already been delivering. This is all to say, I don't want to lose the fact that, like, we've been on this machine learning path for years already. And so, like, it's really just about building on that foundation that we've created. And what's really exciting is, I think, Daniel's vision for where he sees this going as an AI leading platform is well beyond just automation. The question I ask myself is, how are we going to get on the train with our core product? Like, we asked that in discovery ourselves. And I see Kim laughing too. So it's definitely just dependent on each product, is kind of my short answer.
Super helpful.
And I would say, even with generative AI, like even within UiPath, like an autopilot for everyone, right? I think one of the things that, especially autopilot for everyone, the one that's an assistant that is directly interacting with business users, the user experience is so important, right? Like, you know, for like this target audience, if we're targeting business users, if that's not like seamless experience, people going in, understanding what they're supposed to do, if it's complicated, you lose the users, right? And user adoption, user engagement are really core metrics to a product organization. And it's core to like any driving business results because people aren't using it. It's not driving any business results either.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it is so important that for anything that's business user facing, that user experience just has to be intuitive. Like people shouldn't be like clicking around trying to find something. If they can't find it, they're not going to try to look for it, right? Like, and it's understanding that about the behaviors of your end users. And specifically even for autopilot for sales, right? Like one of the key things that like we've learned is, I think when we started this journey, we're like, oh, now that people can talk in natural language, it's gonna be easy. People are gonna just figure it out, right? We don't need to do too much enablement, too much onboarding. But prompt engineering is a thing in itself, right? It's a skill in
Yeah.
itself. And even using the product and saying like, hey, here are some recommendations. If I give a salesperson like a very generic example of like, oh, this is what autopilot can do, they're just like, that doesn't help me, right?
Yeah.
But I have to provide very specific examples that are like, oh my goodness, this would save me so much time. I have to use this. I must try this, right? And hopefully on the other side, it actually works and delivers what you want it to do. And that is largely determined by how good your prompt is, right? And whether the context and automations are there to support that. But from the user side, like Gen AI, I think there's so much around making sure, at least from UiPath's perspective, that we actually have targeted things, targeted scenarios for different business processes. So Noopur, I think when you mentioned like understanding the customer, right? Understanding business processes, right? It is so critical to have something where even when we're selling to executive buyers, they see it and they're like, that's what my people do all day. And I don't want them to do that anymore. I want autopilot to help for that. Showing them a very generic, like use case that's like productivity, I don't know, like ordering a meal, like something that's not business specific is not going to actually close that deal for us at UiPath on the product, but it's also not going to drive any like engagement from the users being like, oh, like this is actually going to take away like work I don't want to do anymore, right? So yeah.
No, I think that's really important. And it's great to hear it, full circle from that ideation and through development, that's a constant question and theme of why are we doing this? What's the business impact? What's the problem we're solving? All the way through, as SEs and sales team members position it, as the marketing teams get that message out, to the world is, I think, pretty powerful and great to hear, that alignment from the initial ideation. Kind of jumping into a little bit now, a few more questions that have come in that I think are pretty interesting, kind of tied to where I was going to ask you all to go is, as we've had these sessions, so this is our second one of 4, and we're trying to highlight all of the different roles. And I think product engineering is maybe one of those, sales and customer success and supporting functions where they're male dominated, but maybe not as heavily so as product and engineering traditionally. I think over the last few years, there's been a lot of changes and progress. I think some of the questions have been, how do you think we can encourage more women to not only get women in tech and automation AI, which is a lot already of momentum and work to do, but specifically within product and engineering? And then maybe related, what is that look like? Have you had mentors and coaches and who do you talk to? And what does that look like for you as individuals? And then any thoughts broad, how we can continue to help, diversify specifically this function within the organizations in the space?
Who wants to start? Kim, you want to start or should I go?
You go ahead. I'm still
Okay. So I definitely think that the automation space has a lot, just beyond product and engineering. I think the automation space has a lot of work that it can do to diversify and to bring more women into it. IT automation can be a very technical segment of the SaaS space, and inevitably then is a little bit hard to enter into and to get a foothold into. I always tell the story, like, I'm very transparent about how I got this job, which is that I applied on LinkedIn and I had no idea what UiPath did. And I had touched in automation. And I spent like 2 days and nights learning how to develop something in Studio for my interview because I was so worried. I had no idea what an automation script was. And so it's not an easy place to enter. I think beyond that, in product and engineering, there is this kind of realm of, okay, you need to be a technical person, right? You need to have technical insight. You need to have a technical background or a software engineering background to get a foothold in there. Obviously, if you're an engineer, yes, you do. But in the product space, what I've found is that you can build those skills. Those are skills that can be learned. More engineering skills can be learned. So I think another piece is one thing we can do is diversify by looking at people who have, the soft skills, the ability to look at the customer, to understand the use case, and start investing in the way that we can teach them some of the more technical skills. I think the other piece here is I think Kim and I are testaments to the fact that we have transitioned from different roles, right? So
Yeah.
to give people opportunity to transition when they have interest. And then I think the third piece here is also when it comes to at least diversifying specifically women in automation, it's going to be about building community, which obviously we're already doing here, right? But beyond just UiPath. And so a lot of the work that I did when I was a sales engineer was connecting with other women in the partner ecosystem or with customers that were COA leads that were women, right? To help see their perspective and the kinds of bottlenecks and things that they were running into in a historically, male dominated industry, and continuing to build that community.
Yeah,
Really
for sure.
helpful.
I would say, yeah, like when I started my career, like my career started when I was at PwC, like that's how I got into RPA. I was actually a shared services and outsourcing consultant. And naturally, like one way that customers can optimize is when RPA came around, like automation. And I still actually remember at that time, my manager told me, oh, if you can build something, then anyone can, like building something like an RPA automation. And I remember feeling a little bit insulted, honestly, by that comment. And I
Yeah.
made it a point to learn and build it, right? Like, and I was like, I taught myself, got like asked people for help. And, the very first automation I built was actually bugging that exact manager, sending daily notifications, being like, I did it, right? And I mean, not them saying like that should be your fuel for a fire, but I remember that was actually at that time, they were just like, oh, Kim, you can just build the decks around it, right? Like build decks. And I was like, I want to actually learn it. I want to actually tangibly build something. And I still remember in those days when I was an RPA developer in that role and eventually cranked out like 30 plus automations and stuff. Like for me, I actually found some joy in like thinking through the design of it. How can I make it like a really great user experience for the end user that it's actually going to help this business process? And I loved actually like diving deep into it and actually found some joy. And sometimes it was frustrating being like, why is this not working? And then when you figure out a solution, you're like, oh, that's great, right? Like, oh, like now I realize I learned something. It's truly being able to like wanting that ability to like want to learn and then take that on and not be scared by it. And I think, but in that respect, it's having people beside you who are supportive, right? When I think about even when I was in the product org, like opening Figma, there's so many buttons to click, right? But the designer on my team was like, hey, let me walk you through just like the 5-6 things you need to know, like for what you want to do, and then you can explore other things. And actually last year I ended up taking like an accredited course just to have a UX certification, because I think that's something that I just really love thinking about, like user behavior in the digital world. But that's something I went out and did on my own because I think that was something that was really important to me. And I want to be able to communicate my vision through visuals, right? Like if I'm doing this again, instead of doing it on PowerPoint, next time I actually build it in Figma and actually do a true prototype around it. But I really think that having a community, having people, like for me, when I moved into product last time at that point, I had a manager on like who was in product and a pillar leader who really believed in me, right? Like was super supportive and would ask me like, what do you think, right? Like, what are your thoughts, right? Versus just saying, do this, do that. Like they really built up my confidence and my abilities. And I think I look back, and even with Autopilot for sales on the go-to-market side, I had leaders on this side who are like, I believe in you. I trust your perspective on this, and I want you to do this. Because like even last year in April, before we even had Autopilot really like built out, we actually incubated like just this like skunkworks version of it. that we nicknamed brains, right? Like, but the ability and having mentors and even a manager who was like, carve out time, try it because we believe in this. I think that was something that was so important. That's finding people who support you and believe in you. So yeah.
And how did you find those people? How did you, some of it is luck, I'm sure a little bit, but some of it is you set that stage. I think both of you have hit on that of showing up authentically as yourselves and owning that, and putting in the work and the time to double down in the areas that maybe excited you and or, were required by these jobs. But if you land in a new job or a new company or these new roles, how do you, create and find that community, be it your manager or a fellow designer showing you some of the most important buttons? How did you go about asking questions and finding those people?
Yeah, I think some of it is definitely luck, right? If you get a manager who's willing to create that space for you, that's huge. And that's part of the interview process, or even the assessment of the team you might join, even if it's a lateral internal move. But honestly, I did two things when I first joined. I still do it. I blind Slacked people, which is like slacking people I've never talked to before or who I don't know.
Yeah.
And constantly just asking questions, either about their area of work or, hey, I think you might be related to this. I saw your name on this engagement and I'd like to learn more about it. And nobody has said no. Everybody has been willing to give, at least some sort of insight, which I think for me, it was just swallowing the fear and sending the message that is first, part of it. So I think it was building a community through that. And then the product manager in me says, don't do this, but I did it for the first year. And I do think that it paid off because there's a trade-off with time. But the first year I worked at UiPath, I didn't say no to anybody. If anybody asked anything of me, I pretty much said yes, even though it may have meant that I worked in a little extra one of the days, whether it was building an automation for somebody for forward or building demo content for someone else or doing something else. And so it's about investing in other people, because when then later you are looking for feedback, you're looking for insight, you're looking for advice, people are willing to invest back in you. You've established that relationship because of that, right? And so I still to this day don't like to say no, and I try not to. There are only so many hours in the day as well, but I like to try to pay it forward as much as I can.
Sure. I love that approach. And I think that's pretty powerful on both sides there of one, just asking is sometimes the hardest, and people are pretty receptive, and two, and then setting that stage for others and creating that space. Anything additional on your approach, Kim, as you've navigated and built this strong community and advocates?
I think it's like Noopur said, like for me, I built all my relationships through like doing something, improving, like having some, I mean, it's nice if someone just like put blind faith in you being like, you say you can do this and I trust you, right? But it's another thing to say like, look, I built this out. Like, this is my vision. Again, it goes back to like communicating it. But having worked with a lot of, I think being at UiPath for 5 years, having that, being able to work with so many different people and different organizations, especially as I've moved myself, it is, wherever I can help people and engage with them. And if I'm asking for help, it's also asking from a place of curiosity, right? Like I constantly believe for myself that like I am not the expert in any field. I'm not like the best in any way. Like I want to keep learning because I think the people around me are the people who are going to teach me the most. And so I think reaching out to people and being able to say like, hey, I'm just like really interested in like speaking with you, chatting with you, hearing your perspective. Like there's definitely no harm in that. And I can understand like the fear of that, like Noopur, like I think I experienced that too. I remember my first reach out, I was like, oh, I'm like really scared. What if they don't say, what if they say no, right? But at least definitely within UiPath, like everyone's been so wonderful. Like one of the reasons I'm still here at UiPath is because of the people, right, that we work with day to day. Everyone is so kind and generous with their time. And so I try to also, wherever I can help others, also do that. But it is in doing things and working with people together that built that trust, right? With people saying, okay, like, let me give you that space and create that ability for you to try launching something that no one's done before. So yeah.
I love it. I love both sides of that. And I think that's pretty special to have that, and that recognition of one, just be curious. That curiosity drives a lot, and show up and put in the time and the work. And then also that connection, pay it forward, because you've really driven a lot of that. Thank you for that. We have about 10 minutes left. There's a couple questions. I know we were going to maybe ask some of your favorite things you've worked on, like getting back. And we talked about maybe doing a demo. I don't know if we want to pull anything up. I default to either of you all. But, I think there's a couple questions around, what excites you about your work? And I'd love to put it in the kind of the product lens. So is there and you both hit on a little bit your different products, but is there maybe a release, a favorite capability, or something you want to talk about that is like, this is why I'm in product and this is what I'm so excited. I can't wait to do this again. Any little tidbits or stories or something you want to talk about specific to something you've built or worked on in the last year, 2 years?
Trying to think which one.
Or there's so many.
There's a few. I mean, I'm actively right now working on, and my peer that is working on it with me, who's leading it, is actually on the call as well.
Oh, even better.
And we're basically looking at integrating discovery products together, which is something we transparently have been talking about for years. But to actually do it at a data level is very difficult, and is not something that we have figured out how to take unstructured desktop data and put it in with process mining or with comms mining and things like that. So I think one of the things that's really exciting is that this is something nobody in the market has figured out. They may say they can integrate their products, but when it comes down to the reality of the data, nobody in the market has figured it out, and it's going to become a true differentiator. So I think that's really exciting. One of the other things that is a perfect example of how we've kind of still maintained our startup, let's play around POC, aspect is we had some conversations with leadership on different ways that we can improve our recorder or desktop recorder for task mining, which captures the different activities people do on their desktop. And somebody said, well, why don't we consider, if somebody's creating a training video, there's voice transcription of what they're doing as they're doing it. Why don't we consider that as an input to creating some of this task graph data? And we were like, yeah, we've played around with it. We don't know. And well, now with Gen AI, we can do different ways. We have different ways to look at that transcription of data. So we actually have a POC that we've started in like the last week and a half. And it's been exciting for the engineers as well, because it's something completely new in addition to this other integration work that we're doing, that will then also contribute to the integration work later and benefiting it and making it better. And so we're actually adding like voice technology in a POC. We haven't figured out how we're even going to deliver it, right? There are a lot of open questions to our existing recorder that we haven't actually made any core changes to in years. And that is really exciting to me, because that's a whole new mode of us to collect data from our customers. And that's like a whole new area of the mining market. So that's something that like I'm actively working on. That was an exciting piece. And I think the ability to iterate quickly and experiment quickly is something that UiPath does really well. And it's really exciting that we've kept that even as we've grown into a larger enterprise, company.
Yeah, I love that. I love the excitement. I love the integration of AI, kind of tying some of those earlier questions. Anything top of mind for you, Kim, on around what you're working on, what excites you?
I think being in like that generative AI space and seeing how it applies to different like business areas and how it will really truly transform, I think is what really gets me like excited about being in this space. Because I think for a long time there's barriers, like even within UiPath, when you think about like attended, targeting like sales or contact centers, a lot of areas that were difficult for us truly, because it's just like the nature of that business, the way those business processes run. But now generative AI like opens up like a whole new like area for us to go after. And it's just really on us to think about, how do we want to position it? How do we want to tailor our products to target those areas that are greenfield for us that wasn't there before? I think that's really exciting. I think generative AI will also lower the barrier on like myself, like coming from a non-technical background, right? I think to me, it helps answer. It's not perfect. It's a generative large language model, right? But if I have technical questions, it's something I can ask. I am excited about the future where if I do have an idea, but I don't have the technical skill set, at one point I can put in my vision and it can generate something, right? Like even like a foundation of something, right? Or parts of code, right? That would have taken me so long to troubleshoot and figure out. Like, that's something I'm like super excited about, because I think it'll help many more people like build out like their digital ideas and put it into something tangible. So yeah.
I love it. All right, as we start to wrap up, maybe sticking with you, Kim, and then over to you, Noopur, is, what is one piece of advice you'd give someone who's just entering the P&E, the product and engineering world, or considering making the jump?
I think it's like, you have to try. Like, I think being scared, being like, oh, I don't have the skill set, I don't have the, like that would have stopped me long ago, right? Like, it was
Yeah.
that leap of faith. It is finding the right people, like building the right relationships, connections, be like, hey, I have this idea, I really want to present this, I want to show you what I'm capable of, right? Like, being prepared for that, but not being afraid to even try, right? Like, if you don't try, you're never going to find out if you can make that leap. But really, it's very much like, if there are opportunities, or creating opportunities, right? Like, maybe you do see a gap. For me with Launchpad, I saw a gap, right? And I created something. We didn't have something in that space, and I presented it, got bought in from the go-to-market side leadership, then pushed that over to product, right? If I went straight to product, I don't know that it would have been as successful if I didn't have like CRO being like, CRO was like, we have to do this, like, this is critical, that backing, right? But if you see a gap, I think the cool part of being in product is you're solving problems, right? Like, you're solving a gap, you're building something to solve like an issue, like, or something that can add a benefit to people in their productivity and their life. Do it. Like, it's like, start somewhere. Yeah.
Love that. Perfect summary. Start somewhere. Noopur, any thoughts from you as we close?
I think my three biggest things, in full transparency, still working on these. Like, I have not figured it out at all, and I am still working very much on how to become a better PM every day. But I think the three things are: be vulnerable, especially when you're entering a new product area, or even entering product altogether. Be vulnerable, recognize where your strengths and your weaknesses are, and work on those weaknesses. I think it's to be resourceful. That's the key to success to any role here at UiPath, because the resources are at your fingertips, and you'd be surprised at how helpful people are. So use the resources. And I think the third one is to be strategic. Like I said yes to everything, but I only did it for a small amount of time, right? I don't recommend doing that all the time. But be strategic. If you have areas you want to go learn more about, be resourceful and strategic, because that combination will take you to a new level of understanding and maybe even potentially connecting with other people. Those conversations end up resulting in opportunities later for you. And I can attest to that, of kind of seeing the fruits of bearing that. And so I think that's another piece there as well, is be strategic, because there are only so many hours in the day, and you can only do so much, and you want to make sure that you are prioritizing accordingly, because that's really the key to this job in its entirety.
I love that. I don't know if you guys have been peeking at the chat. There were not only phenomenal questions from the group here, but also a ton of compliments. So thank you both, one, for your time, your honesty, and showing up as your authentic selves. I think that, has at least inspired me. I learned more, and I think I know both of you pretty well. And I'm just continually impressed by how you approach things and how you collaborate across teams and really just keep things moving. Hopefully we got most of the questions. I think we're near at time here. A ton of thank you to you all, to all of those people out there. I'm guessing you'll reach out to these ladies with questions. But thank you for joining today. This was the second one of our 4-part series. So we have the next session October 2nd, and it is going to be with our customer success team. So kind of the post-sales side of the house. I think Diana will share out the recordings and the posts and all of that jazz. So hope you all can join us for this next one. And again, thank you to everyone for your time today and for this conversation. Really appreciate it, and excited to continue to grow this community and have these conversations. So thank you all. I hope you all have a great rest of the day, and we'll all talk soon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.